The darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions. Commander Thexval sat at his station, watching the sensors sweep the neutral zone for the third day in a row. Nothing ever happened out here. His forelegs ached from sitting too long and his antennae drooped with boredom. Then everything changed. "Sir," Velmoth called out from her console. Her voice was sharp with alarm. "We have something." A ship just appeared out of nowhere. "It's big. Really big." Thexval rushed to the main display. His secondary eyes widened as the readings flooded across the screen. A massive shape hung in the darkness 40,000 units away. The ship was like nothing he had ever seen before. It was all hard angles and brutal lines, dark metal that seemed to drink in the starlight. "What is it?" he demanded. Velmoth's fingers danced across her controls. "Unknown, sir. The computer doesn't recognize the design. It doesn't match any ship in our database. Then scan it. I want to know everything about that vessel." The station's most powerful sensors focused on the distant ship. Energy waves swept across the void, touching the mysterious craft and bouncing back with information. Data began streaming onto their screens, and with each new piece of information, Thexval felt his blood run colder. "Sir," Velmoth whispered, "the armor on that ship is 30 meters thick. 30 meters of solid metal alloy. Our warships only have 3 meters of armor at most." Thexval stared at the numbers. "That's impossible. No ship needs armor that thick. The weight alone would make it too slow to maneuver." "There's more." Velmoth's voice shook now. "I'm detecting weapons. Hundreds of them. Kinetic guns that can launch metal projectiles at incredible speeds. And these energy readings, sir, those are fusion weapons. Military-grade fusion cannons." The words hit Thexval like a physical blow. Fusion weapons had been banned by the Galactic Coalition 3,000 years ago. They were too destructive, too dangerous. Wars fought with fusion weapons left entire planets as dead. Radioactive rocks floating in space. "Who builds a ship like this?" he breathed. "Sir, I found an identification signal. The ship is broadcasting its name and origin." Velmoth paused, reading from her screen. "It calls itself the TRSC Retribution. The letters stand for Terran Republic Space Command. Terran? I've never heard of them." Thexval accessed the Coalition database, searching for any mention of this species. The search came back empty. "They're not in our records. They're not part of the Coalition." "Sir!" Velmoth's voice rose with panic. "The ship is moving. They know we scanned them." On the display, the dark shape began to turn. Despite its massive size, it moved with smooth grace. Running lights flickered on along its hull, revealing row after row of weapon emplacements. Gun barrels pointed in every direction. Missile tubes sat ready to fire. The ship looked like it was built for one purpose only: war. Then a message arrived. The translation came through clearly in their language. The voice was male, calm, and completely controlled. "Vekrian Station, this is Captain Daesung of the Terran Battleship Retribution. You have just performed an active military scan on a warship of the Terran Republic. This action is considered aggressive under our rules of engagement. Power down your sensors immediately and prepare to be boarded for treaty negotiations. If you continue scanning, we will consider your actions hostile." Thexval felt his heart's hammering in his chest. The humans were coming, and they were not asking. They were telling. "Velmoth, send an emergency message to Coalition Command. Tell them we've found something. Something big. Something dangerous." He took a deep breath, and then shut down our sensors. All of them. "Yes, sir." As the station systems went dark, Thexval watched the human ship grow larger in his viewport. The Retribution was coming closer, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. He thought about the weapons he had seen on the scans. The armor that could probably withstand any weapon the Coalition had. The fusion cannons that could burn through a planet's crust. And this was just one ship. If the humans had built an entire fleet of these monsters, what would that mean for the galaxy? The Coalition had maintained peace for thousands of years by making sure everyone disarmed. Every species that joined gave up their weapons and trusted the Coalition to protect them. But the humans had never joined. They had built warships instead. And now they were here. The Retribution's hull filled his viewport now. Thexval could see details on the metal surface. Scorch marks from old battles, repair patches where the armor had been damaged and fixed. This ship had seen combat. Real combat. "Sir, they're docking," Velmoth reported. "Their boarding craft is connecting to our airlock." Thexval straightened his uniform and tried to look calm. All security personnel to the docking bay. But keep your weapons lowered. We are not starting a fight with these beings. He made his way to the docking bay, his security team falling in behind him. They looked nervous. Their shock staffs were designed to stop drunk merchants, not soldiers from a species that built ships like the Retribution. The airlock cycled open with a hiss. The first human through the door was a woman. She had dark hair pulled back tightly and her eyes were sharp and focused. She wore a gray uniform with gold markings on the shoulders. At her hip was a weapon that Thexval's implants immediately flagged as dangerous. Behind her came 4 soldiers in powered armor that made them look like walking tanks. But it was her eyes that caught Thexval's attention. They were completely unafraid. This woman had seen things, done things that would give most beings nightmares. "I am Commander Hai-Jin of the Terran Republic Space Command," she announced. Her voice was crisp and professional. "I'm here to escort your commanding officer to Captain Dae-Sung for formal discussions." Thexval stepped forward. "I am Commander Thexval. Your captain mentioned negotiations?" "Yes. The Terran Republic has been watching this region of space for 3 months. We've been studying the Galactic Coalition and learning about you. We decided it was time to make formal contact. Your scan of our warship simply moved up our timeline. With respect, Commander, your ship is heavily armed. The Coalition has laws against fusion weapons and the Coalition's laws don't apply to humanity." Hai-Jin interrupted smoothly. "We're not members of your coalition. Now will you come with me to the Retribution? Or shall we talk here?" Something in her tone made it clear that refusing was not really an option. Thexval gestured to Velmoth. "You're in command until I return. Cooperate with our guests." The walk through the boarding craft was short but disturbing. Every surface was purely functional, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. The soldiers moved with mechanical precision, their armor humming softly with each step. These were not peacekeepers. These were warriors. The Retribution's interior was vast. Corridors stretched in every direction, wide enough for 3 Vectrians to walk side by side. Harsh white lights illuminated everything. Human crew members passed by, all wearing gray uniforms, all moving with purpose and discipline. Hai-Jin led him to a conference room where Captain Dae-Sung waited. The captain was tall, with graying hair and eyes that had seen too much. He stood as Thexval entered and made a gesture of greeting. "Commander Thexval, thank you for coming. Please sit." The furniture had been adjusted for his body shape. They had prepared for this meeting. They had planned ahead. Thexval settled into the chair carefully. "I'll be direct," Dae-Sung began. "Humanity has been expanding into this region of space for 10 years. We avoided contact with the Coalition because we weren't sure if you were friendly. Your scan today forced us to reveal ourselves. Captain, the Coalition is a peaceful alliance of 743 species, all engaged in what you call trade disputes but what we recognize as warfare over resources. We've been monitoring your broadcasts." Dae-Sung slid a tablet across the table. "In the past 5 years, 17 member species have been quietly conquered by Coalition peacekeeping forces. 300 billion beings now live under military occupation." Thexval stared at the data. "Those were necessary interventions to maintain peace, perhaps, but it tells us the Coalition is not as peaceful as it claims." Dae-Sung leaned forward. "Commander, humanity has fought wars that nearly destroyed our entire species. We've learned hard lessons. One of them is this: never trust others to protect you. Your Coalition wants every species to disarm, to comply, to integrate into a system where only the Coalition has real power. And humanity refuses? Humanity insists on the right to defend itself. We've seen what happens when species trust entirely in others. It ends badly." Thexval's antennae drooped. "The Coalition will never accept an armed human fleet in their space. They'll see you as a threat. Then they'll see us as a threat." Dae-Sung's voice was hard as steel. "But they'll also see that we're not easy targets. We're willing to trade. We're willing to share knowledge. We're willing to be neighbors. But we will not disarm. We will not submit to Coalition authority. And we will not apologize for refusing to be victims." In that moment, Thexval understood. The humans hadn't built the Retribution to conquer the galaxy. They'd built it to survive. And that made them either the Coalition's greatest potential ally or their most dangerous enemy. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Coalition Council was in chaos. 300 representatives from member species filled the massive room, their voices creating a storm of alarm and fear At the center of everything, a holographic image of the human battleship Retribution rotated slowly. Every detail of the ship looked more threatening than the last. High Chancellor Vorneth raised his primary arm for silence. He was a tall being made of living crystal, and his body reflected the chamber's lights in rainbow patterns. Gradually the noise died down. Members of the Coalition, his voice boomed through the translation system. We face a situation we have never seen before. A species we didn't know existed has entered Coalition space. Their military technology is far beyond anything we expected. The hologram zoomed in on the Retribution's weapons. Worried whispers spread through the chamber. The Vectrian scan revealed the following information. Vorneth continued. The ship's hull armor is 30 meters thick. It's made of metal alloys stronger than anything in our databases. The ship carries 480 kinetic guns that can launch projectiles at incredible speeds. It has 120 fusion beam cannons, which are banned weapons. The defensive systems include laser arrays, electromagnetic shields, and armor that can regenerate itself. This is insane, shouted Representative Thalvin. His species had 4 jointed arms, and all of them waved in agitation. One ship shouldn't have this much firepower. What are they trying to prove? Admiral Kexnor of the Coalition Defense Fleet stepped forward. Her scaled body gleamed under the chamber lights. Representative, that's the wrong question. The right question is, why do they need this much firepower? And the answer worries me greatly. She manipulated the hologram, bringing up energy readings. Look at the power distribution. The reactor output suggests this ship can fight for months, maybe years, without resupplying. The ammunition storage could supply attacks against entire planets. This isn't just a warship. This is a mobile fortress designed to fight alone for extended periods. Or it's designed to protect colonies far from home, came a calm voice from the human delegation. Everyone turned to look. Ambassador Jiwoo stood up, flanked by 2 human security officers. She was small compared to most species in the chamber, but she held herself with quiet confidence as she walked down to the speaking floor. High Chancellor, may I speak? Vorneth's crystal body flickered with what might have been irritation, but he gestured for her to continue. Thank you. Jiwoo's voice was clear and steady. Members of the Coalition, I represent the Terran Republic. I'm here to give you information you clearly don't have. Yes, the Retribution is heavily armed. It's one of 12 such ships in our fleet. They were all designed for a single purpose, making sure humanity never faces extinction again. Extinction? Thalvin scoffed. You're being dramatic. 20 years ago, Jiwoo interrupted, her tone sharp. Humanity met our first alien species. They called themselves the Vraxen. They came to our colony world with friendly greetings and offers of trade. Within 6 months, they had kidnapped 4,000 colonists for slave labor. When we complained, they attacked 3 more colonies from orbit, killing 9 million humans. The chamber went silent. We had nothing that could stop them. Our ships were built for exploration and research, not war. We were a peaceful species entering the galaxy with hope and curiosity. The Vraxen taught us what that innocence costs. Jiwoo's eyes were hard. It took us 15 years to build a military capable of fighting back. We lost 37 colonies and 2 billion people before we drove them out of our space. The Retribution and her sister ships were born from that experience. Admiral Kexnor studied the human ambassador with new respect. What happened to the Vraxen? They don't exist anymore. Jiwoo's voice was flat, emotionless. When humanity decides something threatens our survival, we're very thorough. The implications hung in the air like a dark cloud. High Chancellor Vorneth's crystal body pulsed with various colors. Ambassador Jiwoo, the Coalition was founded on principles of peaceful coexistence and regulated conflict resolution. Your species arrives with banned weapons and a history of genocidal warfare. How can we possibly trust you? You can't, Jiwoo replied simply. And we can't trust you. Your coalition has 743 member species, all of them voluntarily disarmed and submitted to your authority. Humanity will not do the same. We've seen what happens to species who rely on others for protection. Then why are you here? Vorneth demanded. Because isolation isn't survival either. We want trade and cultural exchange. We want diplomatic relations and everything the coalition offers. But we will maintain our own military. We're not asking to join the coalition. We're asking to be recognized as an independent power that you can negotiate with as equals. Representative Thalvin rose angrily. Equals? You're one species with 12 warships. The Coalition Defense Fleet has thousands of vessels. Numbers aren't everything, Admiral Kexnor said quietly. Everyone turned to her. I've studied the Retribution specifications carefully. In combat simulations, one human battleship could destroy 30 of our dreadnoughts before taking critical damage. 12 such vessels represent a threat we cannot ignore. Then we have no choice, Vornith said heavily. Ambassador Ji-Woo, the Coalition cannot accept an armed power in our space. You must either join us and disarm according to our regulations or leave Coalition territory permanently. Ji-Woo smiled, and there was something dangerous in that smile. High Chancellor, I think there's a third option you haven't considered. What if humanity isn't in Coalition space? What if Coalition space ends where our guns can reach? The chamber erupted into chaos again. Representatives shouted and argued. Some demanded military action. Others called for negotiation. But Ji-Woo had already turned and walked toward the exit, her security escort following close behind. She had delivered humanity's message clearly and without compromise. The Terran Republic would bow to no one. The galaxy would have to accept that reality or face the consequences. As she left the chamber, Ji-Woo thought about the path that had brought humanity to this moment. The losses, the sacrifices, the hard lessons learned through fire and blood. The Vraxen had taught humanity that the galaxy was not a safe place, that peaceful intentions meant nothing to those who saw only weakness and opportunity, that survival required strength, and strength required weapons that could make even the most aggressive species think twice. Back on the Retribution, Captain Dae-Sung received Ambassador Ji-Woo's report. He sat in his command chair, surrounded by displays showing Coalition ship movements and communication intercepts. So they've rejected our offer of peaceful coexistence, he said. Not exactly, Ji-Woo replied over the communication link. They've rejected our refusal to disarm. It's not the same thing. The result is the same. They'll try to force us out. Let them try. We've established Guardian Outpost exactly where we planned. 1 light year inside their claimed territory. If they want us to leave, they'll have to make us leave. Dae-Sung looked at the tactical display. His ship was powerful, but it was still just one ship. If the Coalition sent their entire fleet, the battle would be short and brutal, no matter how advanced human technology was. Captain, his tactical officer spoke up. We're receiving priority communications from Terran Command. The TRSC Defiance and TRSC Vengeance are being redeployed to support our position. They'll arrive in 3 days. Dae-Sung nodded. 3 battleships. That would change the equation significantly. Acknowledged. Maintain defensive posture. Keep all weapon systems on standby. And monitor Coalition fleet movements. I want to know the moment they decide to move against us. Yes, sir. Dae-Sung stood and walked to the main viewport. Stars stretched in every direction, beautiful and cold. Somewhere out there, the Coalition was making decisions that would determine the future of human-alien relations. Would they choose diplomacy or war, coexistence or conflict? He thought about the Vraxen again. How they had come with smiles and left with slaves. How humanity had been unprepared, trusting, naive. Never again. The Retribution had been built to make sure that never again would humanity be caught defenseless. Never again would they trust in the goodwill of strangers. Never again would they assume that peace was the natural state of the galaxy. Sir, his communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Kexnor of the Coalition Defense Fleet. She's requesting a private channel with you. Dae-Sung returned to his command chair. Put her through. The Admiral's scaled face appeared on his screen. She looked tired. Captain Dae-Sung, I'm contacting you outside official channels. What I'm about to say is my personal opinion, not the Coalition's position. I'm listening, Admiral. Your people are right to be cautious. The galaxy is not as peaceful as the Coalition claims. I've seen things in my career that would shock most citizens. Suppressions that were called peacekeeping. Invasions that were called interventions. The Coalition maintains order, but sometimes that order comes at a terrible price. Dae-Sung remained silent, letting her continue. I don't know if war between our peoples can be avoided, but I wanted you to know that some of us understand why you refuse to disarm. Some of us respect it, even if we can't say so publicly. 3 weeks had passed since Ambassador Ji-Woo's speech to the Coalition Council. The tension between humanity and the Coalition had only grown worse. The Coalition demanded that human vessels withdraw beyond their designated borders. Humanity responded by building Guardian Outpost, in what the Coalition claimed was their territory. Now the moment of truth had arrived. Admiral Kexnor commanded the coalition. Response fleet from her flagship, the Harmonious Unity. 60 capital ships surrounded her, representing a dozen different species. All of them bristled with weapons. This was the largest military deployment the coalition had authorized in 30 years. Facing them across the empty void of space was a single human battleship, the Retribution. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Captain Dae Sung, her communications officer reported. Put it through. The captain's face appeared on her screen. His expression was calm and neutral. Admiral Kexnor, I assume you're here to escort us out of Coalition space. Captain Dae Sung, you're in violation of Coalition territorial sovereignty. I'm authorized to use force to remove you. I'd prefer not to. As would I. Dae Sung leaned back in his chair. But I have my orders, Admiral. Humanity has claimed this region of space. We're not leaving. Kexnor felt her scales ripple with frustration. Captain, you have 1 ship. I have 60. This isn't a battle you can win, perhaps. But the question is, can you afford to find out? Before Kexnor could respond, her tactical officer interrupted. Admiral, the Retribution is powering up all weapon systems. Everything is coming online. On the tactical display, the human battleship transformed. Energy signatures blazed across its hull as hundreds of weapons activated. Point defense lasers rotated on their mounts, tracking her fleet with mechanical precision. The massive kinetic guns adjusted their aim. Most worrying, the fusion beam cannons began their charging sequences, their power signatures making warning alerts flash across every screen. Captain, Kexnor said carefully, powering weapons during diplomatic negotiations is considered an aggressive act. So is bringing 60 warships to a negotiation, Admiral. We're simply ensuring our security. Kexnor made her decision. Tactical, bring fleet weapons online. All defensive stations to full alert. The coalition fleet responded, their own weapons powering up. For several tense seconds, 2 military forces faced each other across the void, balanced on the edge of war. One wrong move, one misunderstood signal, and thousands would die. Then Dae Sung spoke again. Admiral, I'd like to propose something. A demonstration. A test, if you prefer. With your permission, we'll conduct a live fire exercise against an asteroid in this system. You can observe and analyze our capabilities. Then we can discuss territory like reasonable people. Kexnor hesitated. Her tactical officer looked at her with concern. But she understood what the human captain was offering. A chance to see their weapons in action without actual bloodshed. A way to avoid war while still making his point. Agreed. Select your target. Tactical, designate asteroid K447, Dae Sung ordered. The tactical displays updated, showing a massive rock roughly 3 kilometers across. It was far enough from both fleets to be safe. It was made of iron and nickel, dense and solid. A good target. Asteroid designated, confirmed a voice from the Retribution. Solution locked. Weapons ready. Fire. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. The Retribution's kinetic guns fired first. Not all of them, just 6. The projectiles were invisible, moving too fast for normal sensors to track. What Kexnor's instruments registered was the result. The asteroid's surface erupted in 6 perfectly spaced explosions. Each impact released energy equivalent to multiple nuclear weapons. Massive chunks of rock simply vaporized. The asteroid shook from the impacts, its solid structure cracking. Impact velocity measured at 0.23 light speed, her tactical officer reported. His voice was shaking. Penetration depth estimated at 400 meters. Admiral, those projectiles went completely through the asteroid like it was made of paper. Energy analysis shows each round delivered approximately 800 terajoules, her science officer added. That's more energy than our entire fleet's combined weapons could deliver in a single volley. But the humans weren't finished. Firing fusion beam cannons, came Dae Sung's voice. 3-second burst. 4 beams of brilliant energy lanced across the void. They were made of fusion plasma, the same reaction that powered stars. The beams converged on what remained of the asteroid. The rock simply ceased to exist. Where a 3-kilometer asteroid had floated moments before, there was now only a rapidly expanding cloud of vaporized metal and ionized gas. The temperature was so high that the remains glowed white-hot in the darkness. Temperature readings exceed 10 million degrees. The science officer whispered. Those beams contained enough energy to destroy a city. Each beam, In 3 seconds, Kexnor stared at the dissipating cloud. Her military mind was calculating scenarios, running simulations, and every single one ended the same way. If the coalition fleet attacked the Retribution, they might eventually destroy it through sheer numbers, but the cost would be devastating. The human ship would take dozens of coalition vessels with it before falling, maybe more, and there were 11 more ships just like it somewhere in human space. Captain Dae-sung, she said slowly. That was quite impressive, Admiral. That demonstration used less than 5% of our weapons. The Retribution carries enough firepower to reduce a planet's surface to molten rock in approximately 48 hours of sustained bombardment. But we don't build ships like this to destroy worlds. We build them so that no one dares to try to destroy ours. Kexnor looked at her tactical display. She looked at the 60 ships under her command. Ships filled with loyal crew members, people with families and lives and futures. She thought about the asteroid that had been obliterated in seconds. She thought about what those weapons would do to her ships, her people. She made her decision. Captain Dae-sung, I'm withdrawing my fleet. I'll be recommending to the Coalition Council that we recognize humanity's territorial claims in this region. I'll also recommend that we establish formal diplomatic relations. This standoff serves no one's interests. A wise decision, Admiral. Humanity has no desire for war with the Coalition. We simply insist on being treated with respect. As her fleet began maneuvering for the journey back to Coalition space, Kexnor studied the Retribution on her screens one more time. The ship's weapons were powering down now, the threatening energy signatures fading. She thought about Ambassador Jiwoo's speech, about the Vraxen who had attacked humanity and were now extinct. The humans had learned their lesson well, perhaps too well, but as she watched the battleship's lights dim, she understood something important. Humanity didn't want to be conquerors. They didn't want to rule the galaxy or subjugate other species. They just refused to ever be victims again. They had been hurt badly by their first contact with aliens. They had lost billions of people, 37 colonies destroyed, and they had responded by building weapons so terrifying that no one would dare attack them again. It was a brutal logic, but it was effective. Admiral, her communications officer spoke up. Message from Coalition Command. They're demanding a full report on why we're withdrawing. Tell them I'll report when we return, and tell them to prepare for some difficult decisions. The journey back to Coalition space took 3 days. During that time, Kexnor wrote her report. She detailed everything she had seen. The asteroid test, the weapon capabilities, the clear message the humans had sent. But she also included her personal assessment. Humanity was not an enemy to be destroyed. They were a potential ally who insisted on strength rather than submission. The Coalition could either accept that reality and work with them, or face a long and bloody conflict that would benefit no one. When she finally presented her findings to the Coalition Council, the chamber was silent. The holographic recording of the asteroid's destruction played on the main display. Representatives watched as solid rock was obliterated in seconds. This changes everything, High Chancellor Vornith said quietly. We can't force them out without massive casualties. And even if we succeeded, what would we gain? A region of space we already control, at the cost of thousands of lives and ships we can't easily replace. There's another consideration, Kexnor added. The humans have been monitoring Coalition space for months. They know our military capabilities, our political structure, our weaknesses. If we go to war with them, they'll exploit every advantage. So we do nothing, Representative Thalvin demanded. We let them dictate terms to us? No, Vornith said. We negotiate. We establish boundaries and mutual agreements. We treat them as what they are, an independent power with significant military capabilities. That sets a dangerous precedent, another representative argued. If we allow one species to remain armed, others will demand the same right. Perhaps they should have that right, Kexnor said quietly. All eyes turned to her. Perhaps the Coalition's model of requiring complete disarmament isn't as wise as we thought. Perhaps some species should be allowed to maintain their own defenses, as long as they agree to certain regulations and oversight. 6 months had passed since the standoff between the Retribution and the Coalition fleet. The galaxy had changed in that time, though not always in ways people expected. The Terran Republic had established 3 permanent stations along their border with Coalition space. Each station was defended by one of humanity's massive battleships. Trade routes had opened cautiously. Human merchant ships carried goods from their colonies to coalition markets. They brought advanced metals, cultural artifacts, and agricultural products that could grow in harsh environments. On Station Harmony, the newly built diplomatic platform that orbited between human and coalition space, Ambassador Jiwoo sat in her office reviewing reports. The neutral station had become the center of human-coalition relations, a place where both sides could meet without either feeling at a disadvantage. Her door chimed. "Enter," she called out. High Chancellor Vornath walked in, his crystalline body catching the light from the viewport. Over the past months, he and Jiwoo had developed a working relationship built on mutual respect, if not complete trust. "Ambassador," he greeted her. "We need to discuss the Mixari Confederation's latest complaint." Jiwoo gestured to a seat. "Let me guess. Our mining operations in the Kepler cluster?" "Exactly. They claim traditional harvesting rights dating back 200 years. They're welcome to mine there too," Jiwoo said. "Space is large. The Kepler cluster contains 47 star systems. We're operating in 6 of them. They say the entire cluster is theirs by historical claim. Historical claims we knew nothing about because humanity wasn't part of the coalition when those claims were filed. Chancellor, we've had this discussion before. Human expansion will continue in unclaimed space. If the Mixari want to formalize their claims through proper legal channels, they know the procedure." Vornath's crystalline structure flickered with colors. His species showed emotion through light patterns, and Jiwoo had learned to read them. This pattern indicated resigned amusement. "You're remarkably inflexible for a diplomat, Ambassador." "I'm a realist, Chancellor. Humanity spent too long being flexible and accommodating. It nearly destroyed us. Now we're courteous and fair, but absolutely firm on matters of sovereignty." "Fair," Vornath repeated thoughtfully. "Tell me, Ambassador, is it fair that your battleships completely disrupt the military balance we maintained for centuries?" Jiwoo set down her tablet and looked directly at him. "Chancellor, let me tell you something about balance. Before the coalition existed, this region was controlled by the hegemony of Krell. They ruled through military might and brutal oppression. When the coalition formed, it took 40 years of war to break their power. 12 billion beings died. Ancient history, Vornath said. The Krell fell 3,000 years ago. And for 3,000 years, the coalition has maintained peace through monopoly on force. Every member species disarms, and the coalition defense fleet keeps order. It's worked mostly, but you've created a system where security requires submission, where every species must trust that the coalition will protect them and won't abuse its power. Are you suggesting we're abusing power? I'm suggesting that unchecked power eventually becomes tyranny. It's not personal. It's historical inevitability. Humanity refuses to place our survival in anyone else's hands, not because we don't trust you specifically, but because trust alone isn't a survival strategy." Before Vornath could respond, both their communication devices lit up with urgent alerts. Jiwoo read the message quickly, her expression hardening. "Chancellor, are you seeing this?" "Yes. Long-range sensors have detected a fleet entering the outer systems. Unknown configuration. Unknown species. They're not responding to communications." Vornath's structure pulsed rapidly with agitation. "Their trajectory indicates they're heading for Talvin 4. Population?" Jiwoo asked sharply. 4 billion. The planet's defenses are minimal. Mostly commercial security vessels. How long until the unknown fleet reaches them? 18 hours. Jiwoo was already moving toward her communications suite. "I need to contact Terran Command immediately. Ambassador, the Coalition Defense Fleet is mobilizing as we speak, and they'll arrive in 36 hours according to standard response protocols. The Talvin will be under attack for 18 hours before your fleet can help." She was encoding a priority transmission. "But the TRSE Defiance is on patrol 3 hours from Talvin 4. Vornath followed her. "You're suggesting a human warship intervene in coalition space without formal authorization?" "I'm suggesting that 4 billion beings might die while we argue about jurisdiction." Jiwoo finished her transmission and turned to face him. "Chancellor, you know what humanity is capable of. You know what our ships can do. Right now we're either a threat or an asset to the coalition. Let us be the asset." Vornath stood silent for what felt like an eternity. Jiwoo could almost see the calculations running through his complex mind. The political implications. The precedent it would set. The risks of trusting humanity with this responsibility. Finally, he spoke. Authorization granted. Under Coalition Emergency Protocol 7, I'm deputizing the TRSC Defiance to respond to this crisis. But Ambassador, tell your captain to show restraint. We don't need a massacre. Jiwoo allowed herself a small, grim smile. Chancellor, humanity has learned many lessons from our history. One of them is the difference between destroying an enemy and sending a message. Captain Tae-young understands this. 3 hours later, the unknown fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Talvin system. They found the TRSC Defiance waiting for them. Captain Tae-young sat in his command chair watching the tactical display. 23 ships had just appeared, all of them armed. Their design was crude but functional, built for raiding rather than military operations. Captain, we're receiving their response to our hail, the communications officer reported. They're demanding we leave immediately or be destroyed. They claim salvage rights to this system. Salvage rights to an inhabited planet with 4 billion people, Tae-young said quietly. These are raiders. Pirates on a large scale. They're powering weapons, sir. Multiple targeting locks on our position. Tae-young had seen this before. These raiders had probably terrorized undefended colonies for years. They weren't used to resistance. They expected their numbers to intimidate any opposition. They were about to learn a hard lesson. Tactical designate targets. Priority to their command ships and weapons platforms. Prepare kinetic barrage and fusion beams. Solutions locked, Captain. Ready on your order. Fire. The Defiance opened fire with devastating precision. Kinetic rounds launched at incredible speeds, crossing the distance to the raider fleet in seconds. Each round had been calculated to hit vital systems, command centers, weapon arrays, engine compartments. The first raider ship exploded as 3 rounds punched through its hull and detonated its reactor. The second lost all propulsion as rounds shredded its engines. The third split in half as a perfectly aimed shot severed its spine. The raiders tried to return fire, but their weapons were too slow and too weak. Point defense lasers on the Defiance intercepted incoming missiles effortlessly. Energy weapons dissipated harmlessly against electromagnetic shields. Then the fusion beams activated. 4 brilliant lances of energy reached across space, each one targeting a different raider vessel. The beams lasted only seconds, but it was enough. Metal hulls melted like wax. Atmosphere vented explosively. 3 ships simply broke apart under the intense heat. The entire engagement lasted 7 minutes. When it was over, 6 raider ships were completely destroyed. 11 more were crippled, their crews abandoning ship and escape pods. The remaining 6 vessels fled at maximum speed, broadcasting warnings about demon ships and death machines to anyone who would listen. Captain Tae-young watched them go. Communications, transmit the following message to the fleeing ships. Tell everyone you meet that the Talvin system and all Coalition space is under protection. Return at your own risk. Message sent, sir. Good. Now let's collect those escape pods and prepare them for Coalition authorities, and send a message to Talvin 4. Let them know the threat is neutralized. On the planet's surface, 4 billion Talvin had no idea how close they had come to disaster. Their day had proceeded normally, unaware that death had approached from the stars and been turned away by a single human warship. By the time the Coalition defense fleet arrived 18 hours later, the crisis was completely resolved. The raider prisoners were secured. The destroyed ships had been analyzed, and the TRSC Defiance was preparing to return to its regular patrol route. Admiral Kexnor reviewed the battle data with quiet amazement. 7 minutes, she said to her staff. They eliminated the entire threat in 7 minutes with 0 civilian casualties and minimal collateral damage. The precision was remarkable, her tactical officer agreed. Every shot calculated. Every target selected for maximum effect. They could have destroyed all 23 ships, but they only destroyed the ones that continued fighting. The others they disabled and captured. Back on Station Harmony, Ambassador Jiwoo received Captain Tae-young's full report. She read it carefully, then forwarded it to High Chancellor Vornath with a simple message. Restraint as requested. 1 year had passed since humanity's recognition as an independent power. The galaxy had changed in ways no one had predicted. Station Harmony had grown from a simple diplomatic outpost to a thriving hub of trade and cultural exchange. Ships from dozens of species docked there daily, and the station had expanded twice to accommodate the traffic. Ambassador Jiwoo walked through the main concourse. observing the mix of beings conducting business. Vecrean merchants negotiated with human traders. Telvan artists displayed their work alongside human sculptures. Children of various species played together in the recreation areas, their parents watching with cautious optimism. This was what peace looked like. Not perfect, not without tensions, but functional and growing stronger each day. Her communication device chimed. It was High Chancellor Vorneth requesting an immediate meeting. The priority code indicated extreme urgency. She found him in the secure conference room, his crystalline body pulsing with patterns she had learned meant severe stress. Chancellor, what's happened? We've detected something. He activated the holographic display. 3 days ago, our deep space monitoring stations picked up energy signatures at the edge of explored space. The readings are consistent with a massive fleet in formation. They're not trying to hide. Jiwoo studied the data. How massive? Over 300 ships. Possibly more. The energy signatures suggest heavy military vessels. They're heading toward Coalition space on a direct vector. Have you attempted communication? Multiple times. No response. They're jamming our frequencies and continuing their approach at maximum speed. Vorneth's body pulsed rapidly. Ambassador, based on their current trajectory and speed, they'll reach our outer colonies in 14 days. Jiwoo felt ice form in her stomach. Do you have any identification? Any idea who they are? Our Xenology department has been analyzing their ship designs against historical records. They found a match. He changed the display to show an ancient symbol. This matches records from over 2,000 years ago. Before the Coalition existed, before most current species achieved spaceflight. Who are they? They call themselves the Krell Ascendancy, the descendants of the hegemony that once ruled this region through terror and conquest. Jiwoo stared at the symbol. She remembered the history lessons. The Krell hegemony had been destroyed in the war that led to the Coalition's formation. 12 billion beings had died in that conflict. I thought they were extinct. So did we. Apparently, a portion of their civilization survived and fled to deep space. They've been rebuilding, growing stronger. And now they're returning to reclaim what they consider their territory, which includes all of Coalition space. And human space as well. Vorneth turned to face her directly. Ambassador, the Coalition defense fleet is strong, but it was built for peacekeeping operations and border conflicts. Not for fighting a war against a dedicated military power. We need time to mobilize, to build more ships, to prepare defenses. Time you don't have. No. Which is why I'm here. The Council has authorized me to request formal military assistance from the Terran Republic. Jiwoo was quiet for a moment. This was what humanity had been preparing for. What every battleship had been built to face. But the decision wasn't hers to make alone. I need to contact Earth. This requires authorization from our government. Of course. But Ambassador, please hurry. 14 days isn't much time. Jiwoo returned to her office and opened a secure channel to Earth. The conversation with the Terran Republic's leadership lasted 3 hours. Questions were asked. Scenarios were discussed. Risks were evaluated. In the end, the decision was unanimous. 12 hours later, Ambassador Jiwoo stood before the Coalition Council. The chamber was packed with representatives, all of them looking frightened and desperate. They had seen the projections. They knew what was coming. Members of the Coalition, she began. The Terran Republic has reviewed your request for military assistance. We understand the threat you face. We've studied the historical records of the Krell hegemony and the atrocities they committed. The chamber was silent, hanging on every word. Humanity remembers what it's like to face extinction. We remember the Vraxen who attacked us without mercy. We built our fleet so that we would never be helpless again. But we also built it with the understanding that strength without purpose is just violence. She paused, looking around the chamber. The Terran Republic agrees to provide full military support to the Coalition. All 12 battleships of the human fleet will deploy to defensive positions within Coalition space. We will coordinate with the Coalition Defense Fleet. We will fight to protect every species and every world threatened by the Krell. The relief in the chamber was visible. Some representatives actually cheered. However, Jiwoo continued, her voice hardening, humanity will command its own forces. We will coordinate with Coalition military leadership, but we will not submit to Coalition authority. Our ships, our tactics, our rules of engagement. This is non-negotiable. High Chancellor Vorneth stood. The Council accepts these terms. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you to all of humanity. Within 48 hours, the entire human battle fleet had assembled at the primary defensive line. 12 massive battleships arranged in a formation that maximized their overlapping fields of fire. The Retribution, the Defiance, the Vengeance, and 9 others, their names chosen to remind everyone of humanity's history and purpose. Captain Dae Sung commanded the fleet from the Retribution. Around him, his bridge crew worked with calm efficiency. They had trained for this. They were ready. Fleet status, he asked. All ships report ready, sir. Weapons charged. Shields at maximum. Ammunition bays fully loaded. Coalition fleet status? Admiral Kexnor reports her forces are in position. 347 ships spread across the defensive line. They're coordinating fire patterns with our fleet. Dae Sung nodded. The coalition had more ships, but most were lighter vessels designed for patrol and peacekeeping. The heavy lifting in this battle would fall to humanity's battleships. Sir, long-range sensors are picking up the Krell fleet. They're dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Distance 1 million kilometers and closing. Put it on screen. The main display showed a sea of ships. Hundreds of them. All bearing the ancient symbol of the Krell hegemony. They were massive vessels built for war and conquest, and they were heading straight for the defensive line without slowing. They're not even trying to negotiate, his executive officer observed. No, they're here to take back what they consider theirs. Dialogue was never an option. Dae Sung opened a fleet-wide channel. All human vessels, this is Captain Dae Sung. 2,000 years ago, the Krell hegemony terrorized this region of space. They ruled through fear and brutality. They killed billions and enslaved entire species. Today, they return expecting to resume that reign of terror. He paused, looking at his crew. They're about to learn that the galaxy has changed, that there are species who will stand against tyranny, that humanity and our allies will not allow another age of darkness. All ships, weapons free. Engage at will. The space between the two fleets erupted with fire. The Krell opened with their heaviest weapons, launching thousands of missiles and energy beams toward the defensive line. It was an overwhelming attack meant to shatter the defenses through sheer volume. The coalition ships responded with their own weapons, creating a wall of defensive fire. Many Krell missiles were destroyed, but some got through. Coalition ships took damage, shields flashing and armor scorching. Then the human battleships opened fire, and everything changed. Kinetic rounds launched at incredible speeds, each one calculated to penetrate deep into Krell ships and detonate critical systems. Fusion beams lanced across space, burning through Krell armor like paper. Point defense systems created an impenetrable shield around the human ships, destroying every missile and intercepting every energy beam. The first wave of Krell ships broke apart under the assault. Then the second. Then the third. Target their command ships, Dae Sung ordered. Break their coordination. The Retribution's main guns focused on the largest Krell vessel, clearly their flagship. 50 kinetic rounds struck it simultaneously, overwhelming its shields and punching through its hull. A fusion beam followed, burning through to the ship's reactor. The Krell flagship exploded in a ball of fire visible for millions of kilometers. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Krell kept coming, kept attacking, kept dying. They had numbers and weapons and determination. But they were fighting tactics and technology, 2,000 years out of date against enemies who had learned from the hardest lessons history could teach. Captain Tae Young on the Defiance coordinated with 3 coalition dreadnoughts to encircle and destroy a Krell heavy cruiser. Captain Hee Jin on the Vengeance led a strike that crippled an entire Krell battle group. Ship after ship, the human fleet demonstrated why they had built vessels that could terrify even their allies. Finally, the Krell fleet broke. The survivors retreated in disorder, their formation shattered and their morale destroyed. They had come expecting easy conquest. They left having lost over 200 ships and learning that the galaxy they remembered no longer existed. The coalition had lost 32 ships.